So are you ready? Are we? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will you take roll, please?
Mrs. Amberby.
Here.
Mrs. Butler.
Here.
Mrs. Donahue. Here. Mrs. Leskowicz.
Here. So stand for the. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Will you take roll, please?
Mrs. Donahue.
Yes.
Mrs. Butler.
Yes.
Mrs. Amberby.
Yes.
Mrs. Leskowicz.
Yes. Do we have any?
We do.
All right, Doc. Hughes, come on down.
I did not want to know what to speak because I don't know what the agenda is. I was hoping that there's a chance I can speak afterwards.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is there a possibility I can speak afterwards if I need to?
No, we do all the public participation up front now.
Because I want to make one that I want to make a statement I don't like that. So thank you.
Okay, well. So that brings us to the OFCC facilities project review and discussion.
Okay, I will turn it over to our education planners and FFD and OFCC. Hi, Valerie. You got Mel and Tim here. So Tim and Mel are from FFD, Valerie's from OFCC, and I'm from BLS. So anyway, this was probably the least amount you'll hear from me speak at a board meeting. So enjoy it. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Mike. Melanie Friedman with FMD Architects. First, wanted to just say how excited we are to be here to present this information. We have been working with the district for some time, just identifying challenges with the current facilities and the population, overcrowdedness, and different priorities and what we could do about that. And thankfully, the state came up with change in their funding protocols, and turns out there's a lot we can do about that, and that's what we're here to talk about. So Valerie is going to run through just kind of an overview of where we are in the state's process right now and what's coming next, and then we'll take you through the next few minutes.
All right, so yeah, it's Valerie. So during our last commission meeting, we did make a change to our policies that allowed us to bring forward a little bit earlier than originally planned some of our districts that we considered or identified as low wealth when it comes to our equity list. So the equity lists can be a whole long explanation, but it's a way in which we identify districts that are in need from the Department of Education and Workforce, and based on Bethel's prior project and where they ranked, it was updated policy that allowed us to move them forward sooner than we would have told them even 6 months ago, which is good. There's a need here. It sounds like we can get to that need a little sooner than originally, thought of 5-6 years ago when they did the previous project. So yeah, I think right now the district is reviewing the different master plan options. We've worked with the district, looked at somewhat different options, and they will go through the two ones that are in the leading contingent later on, but there has been some back and forth discussion about different options and kind of narrowing it down. At the end of the day, we'll need a final option as far as an overall plan and what the project would be here in the next few weeks. And so yeah, there's bullet points in the third one. We'll need a master plan by the end of this month to be able to update and approve a plan. There's going to be one final adjustment to that plan in which we have what we call an updated cost set. So the numbers we're looking at now, we can't say up to those point or what we call a 2025 cost set. Hopefully today or tomorrow, we've gotten updated numbers from our consultants to say, or hopefully project over the next few years what the inflation factor would be, to say, okay, we're going to give you money today that will hopefully cover the cost of construction in 2 to 3 years, or year to 2 or 3 years depending on construction costs and over the course of that time. But those numbers will probably come in today or tomorrow. And so that will be kind of one last thing that will get updated and adjusted, and then the idea would be once the plan is picked from the district this month, that we'll put together a package of documents and information, bring back to the district, approved, I believe, at the June board meeting, by the district, and then it would go to our commission in July. But that's our typical funding month, and that's when we will, at least at this point, looking to fund about approximately 9 districts across the state, for this next, year worth of projects, and that will be one of them, so, but yeah, so once it goes to the commission, there's a few more steps, but then shortly thereafter, we'll be able to start issuing a project agreement and working on the project, because of the money that was accrued building this building that we're sitting in, the elementary school. It allows us to move forward with practically nothing coming from the district, where the state will end up paying this portion of it. There may be some, what we call locally funded initiatives that could come up, and I'll let FMD talk about some potential ones, but for the most part, it's gonna be a district or a project paid for by the state to pay back what we owe the district from building this elementary school building. So there's some unforeseen or some unexpected things. There may be some local funds, but for the most part, it's going to be a state funded project that will be able to proceed very quickly into the selecting of folks and architects and designs and all that. So exciting for us because it means a project that can move forward, move quickly into our folks, project staff, but also maybe the district, because this should be pretty much able to move forward with very little funds coming from the district to move into that project phase. So it's sort of a quick snapshot of where we're at today, but any questions about where we're at, at least timeline wise?
What's that?
Any questions from you guys? That's time.
Yep, just one point of reference, the 21st, we're okay to get the resolution on the 21st, correct?
For the
April.
April?
yeah.
I just, because we,
I'll make it.
thank you, because we said mid-April, but I knew we were, okay, just want to verify that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I think we'll be fine because to be honest, since the numbers aren't gonna be coming out until probably the next couple of days, we can't expect districts to turn around in 2 days to tell us for sure, but and you guys have narrowed it down to relatively simple and one or two options that we've already developed. It won't take us long.
Okay.
Once you give us that official, which one we're going with, to go get put together the packages. I'll just, since I'm in charge of putting it together, I'll help put you guys at the end so that we're not rushing through. We can get you guys what you needed with the current document.
Okay. Thank you. Board, any questions on time? Okay. Thanks.
I have one clarification though. I know you talked about this policy change basically moved us up to the top of the list. Can you estimate for us in the community, like how many years did that save us from waiting?
I would bet at least 5 or 6 years at this point. Yeah, because the district previously had responded to the outreach, and this was a different superintendent many years ago that didn't respond to get into our queue. And so we've been working through a queue of about 100 districts, and we're down into the 40s of those districts, but it's taken us 8, 9 years to get through about 60 districts. So if we gotta add you guys to the back of that already 40 deep districts, list of districts, it could be another 5 to honestly 10 years to get to you guys again. Going kind of the traditional normal old fashioned route, but this policy not only reaches you guys, there's a couple other districts, and so but it kind of goes back to the original intent of the program to serve the quote low wealth districts that, based on the Department of Ed and our educational workforce, their list to get back to certain ones that had yet to be served. Because if you look at the list of equity rankings, majority of those ones from 1% or ranked first through like 100 have already been served. There's only a handful that have yet to be served. So we're trying to go back and fill in the gaps that we haven't had to reach yet. And we've had a lot of districts move and shift up and down that list. And so as districts shifted down the list, we wanted to make sure we got some sooner than later.
I mean, that's a good point, Rick. We've said this before, I thought 6 years probably expedite this process, and you don't have to go to the voters for a bond issue. I mean, it's really a chance, once a lifetime opportunity, so pretty excited.
We're excited. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the comparison of the master plan options here, and forgive me if I use any acronyms. There's a lot of number crunching and different details, tons of information behind the scenes that supports these. So if people have specific questions or want us to look at something, we can check numbers and look some things up. We're just trying to provide a high level overview, just to boil it down to kind of the key points that we think should be looked at. And if there are any, as we go through the pros and cons, if there are any additional pros and cons that the board wants us to add to this list as we move into next week's community meeting, we'd be happy to do that. We want to get your feedback through this to help refine what's presented and discussed with the community. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. So what we've been studying here is two options. One would be for a new high school and one for a new middle school. The grade configurations would stay the same as what we have right now. So in this building, elementary school would stay K-4, the middle school would be 5 to 8, and the high school would be 9 to 12. So we kind of kept consistent grade banding with the study. It's really the differences in what the OFCC, the Facilities Commission, will co-fund, and what they provide in terms of high school space versus middle school space, and what the size of the number of students in those buildings is. One thing that we want to note is the middle school actually, even though it's the same number of grades, the middle school has a higher population because there aren't students that are leaving for MBCTC or other like early college type things, where the high school actually has a few less students in it than the middle school does. So that impacts some of these numbers that you're looking at here. So the intent is that everything, no matter which plan is done, everything prior to 1999 on the current high school and middle school building would be removed for the state's plan. And then an addition would be put on for new construction to bring that building up to today's standards for classroom education and design for either a new renovation to keeping that a middle school or keeping it a high school. So either way, one of those grade bands is going to move out. In the new high school version, the total new constructed space between the new high school and the addition to the middle school would be just under 138,000 square feet. In the middle school version, because you're building more space for a larger number of students, that goes up just a little bit to about 143,000. So the way that those spaces break down, the academic space that would be built is about just over 3,500 square foot different, a little less of the high school versus the middle school. But the physical education and athletic spaces are actually quite a bit more with the high school. So when you think about the needs of the district in gym space, just for practices and getting all the middle school and high school students in there, getting adequate fans in there, the OFCC will co-fund more athletic space for our high school and middle school. So a lot of that square footage difference is between those two parameters. And then we didn't put it in there with the cafeteria space or the common areas, restrooms, things like that. When you have more students, those spaces are bigger. The existing high school actually has some spaces in it that are larger. The cafeteria is larger than what the OFCC would typically fund. So there are some oversized spaces already that actually are pretty conducive to a larger student body as well. So the difference in the total project cost for what would be coming from the state is just a little different than $3 million. So $62,882,000 on the new high school and $65,719,000 on the middle school. Either way, you have enough funds raised that the state can come back and pay for this. It just makes a difference in at the end of the project what you would get back in your refund of what you contributed or paid for this. Any questions on this piece before I move on? As far as the pros, and then the next slide will show the cons of each option. So pros for a new high school. There are spaces in the middle school, Ohio School Design Manual is called OSDM, that they'll provide for music, band, gymnasium spaces, science. You get more in a high school than you do in a middle school. So when you move the middle school students into the high school, they're actually getting high school level spaces. As an example, the band and music spaces might have some practice rooms associated with them that you don't get in any middle school, but you get them in a new high school. So if you build a new high school, you get them for the high school, and you also get to use the things that have already been built in your existing high school. So it gives you a little bit more accoutrements for what will end up being in the building. I already touched on the larger gymnasium size. There's also other flexible athletic spaces, not just the square footage of the gym itself, but weight room, multi-use room that can maybe be used for wrestling. There's ways that you can configure all of that to pull the bleachers back into those spaces and really maximize what you get. With the middle school, you're really just getting a gym, a couple locker rooms, and should be teacher space. The high school being new could be positioned so that it's closer to the field house. So at the end of the school day, when the high school lets out, those student drivers aren't trying to go from their student parking lot over where the existing building is, near the other students, and switching parking lots or anything like that. There are opportunities to keep cross traffic completely away from them, even with being up there. And your total project cost, as you saw, was about 4% less than the middle school option to bring more money back to the district later. Pros of the second option for the middle school, they would be getting space that's designed specifically for them. Space, when we talk to middle school the teachers, one of the things they said is that they feel like they've always gotten kind of other people's spaces, and it's been a little bit frustrating over the years for them to move into other people's spaces. So if you were to do a new middle school, it would be purpose built for them, and they'd have their own space. The students, when you look at the campus as a whole, if the middle school were put behind the elementary school, all the other level students would be together, and the high school students would be segregated on the campus. So those are two pros. And then if you go to the next page, some cons of the new high school option. The middle school students would move into the old high school and kind of have a lot of elbow room in the existing buildings while they wait for segment 2. But if segment 2 wasn't done immediately, they would have to wait 5-6 years before they got their demolition and new space built. We'll talk about that timing in a little bit too as well. And again, one of the middle school comments was the high school gets the newest building, and the middle school accommodates reconfigured spaces for portions of theirs. They would obviously have some new spaces built just for them as well. The cons to the new middle school, as we already talked, the spaces might not have as many existing features that they could borrow from the existing high school. They would lose out on some of the oversized spaces. Music, student dining is quite a bit bigger than what the new building would have in any middle school. Science rooms in the high school currently have lab and prep space, and you wouldn't get those prep rooms and things like that. Another con, it's not a huge dollar amount in the grand scheme of things, but the way that the kitchen space is sized, it would require $23,000 of local funding put into the plan. It's called Project Agreement MFI. If the middle school were built new, that would be required in that scenario. It wouldn't be required in the high school version. And on this one, you're about 4% higher on each of those. So moving into a little bit more detail, I'm not going to go through every single one of these line item by line item, but one of the things that we wanted to check before we got too far was what will the state co-fund in their plan? They have very specific formulas for the number of students in the building, what grade configuration it is, how many square feet that equates to, what types of classrooms would be in it. There's certain minimums for academics, there's maximums for athletic space. So we ran through a quick scenario. It's probably a 10 or 11 tab Excel spreadsheet, and then it comes up with a summary page in front. in there you can see like overall classroom space. So based on the existing number of staff, this is also, because we've been moving so quickly, we haven't had time to completely vet this and sit down with the principals and everybody and make sure all these numbers are exact. This is approximate based on current number of staff in the building, and there's little spaces like study halls and things like that. We didn't go count actual room configurations. But the new high school would get approximately 4 more classrooms than what it currently has now, so 1 classroom per grade. It would also qualify for a multi-use space, which is 1,500 square feet. If we chose to eliminate that, we could turn that into 2 more classrooms instead of a larger room. Most of the other spaces were very similar to what's there now. The special ed spaces, we always want to make sure we take special note of, because the state OSDM has some basic parameters for self-contained rooms and what they call resource rooms that are used usually by intervention specialists. But almost every district has more students on IEPs or more support services that they're providing for those students that don't always spill into that. So we wanted to make sure that all of that was cared for. So by getting that comparable, the space we use there isn't as much space left for additional classrooms and things like that. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling through the program. And this is not a final version of it by any means. It's just a quick study to see, okay, can we get what you have now and a little bit more without needing to raise local funds to build a bigger building as we plan for the future. And these are sized for about 10 years out with a higher population. Moving into the new middle school, this one runs a little tighter. You only getting a couple more classrooms. We're showing 36 compared to the 34 teaching stations that you have now. Same opportunity would apply for a multi-use room that could be converted to 2 classrooms. And then again, same thing, everything's pretty similar from there on out. And we have an opportunity to shift some things around a little bit. As you get into actual design way down the road, you can talk about teaching areas and workrooms and if stuff's combined or separated, book storage. Like there's all kinds of little spaces that can add up into different things. So this is just a high level overview to just really look at, can we get the buildings we need with what the state will provide? What do we need to have some additional? Are there any questions on any of those?
The multi-purpose room, that could be used for like different, like, so that like the resource classes.
They're usually used for, like if you have, say you have 2 classes that want to do a group project together, or a larger function, a small assembly, something like that, where you need more kids in one space, then, and it avoids having to put the movable partitions between classrooms that have acoustic challenges, and then you all have trouble with those in high school. I don't think you want those in your building. So it just provides a kind of larger group space. The resource for the special education, there are dedicated rooms for that. In this, they're accommodated in here. There would be 2 900 square foot split rooms, so you could get 4 teachers in there, plus a smaller 600 square foot self-contained classroom, in addition to some MH space. And again, this can all move around back in the regular classrooms and things, but we made sure to allocate a lot of space for that. So the multi-purpose room would really be able to be free study halls. It could be special after-school robotics club, you know, anything like that. Any other questions? The one thing we should point out too, as far as the locally funded initiatives, the state needs to know what master plan direction you're going with. Are you doing it in high school? Are you doing it in middle school? But as far as do you need 2 extra classrooms on one of the buildings, you don't have to choose that yet. You don't owe that decision on first. We're meeting. You have some time to add that in. We were even talking on the way down here. I don't know if you guys have ever even allowed, like, we could design an alternate where the architect design an alternate, I shouldn't say we. The architect could design an alternate and, if it is expected on midday within the budget, then you get those extra classrooms. If it's not, then you could say, we have extra funding, we're gonna pay for those ourselves out of our own money and do. So you don't necessarily have to have every single locally funded piece figured out. When you're doing a bond issue, that's really important to have figured out, so you know you have enough money raised. In this case, it's not as crucial on timing when you figure out those local pieces.
If we added like a class, like a CTE class, that would be like a lab to, that is a possibility.
Yeah. And there's some of that space in there as well, or some technology spaces where you have.
I was thinking maybe like an ag class or like. So like maybe pretty big classroom.
Yeah.
A pretty big lab space. I know like a lot of CTE classes require like a classroom or a lab space or like a workspace.
Yeah. And we've been able to get those worked into co-funded plans as well without needing an LLI.
So like the gym, is that like an aux gym? I know you said like a multi-use area.
It's not big enough to be an auxiliary gymnasium. It, there is one in the program that you could pick up at 7,000 square feet, but you would lose 7,000 square feet of other space, and there just isn't enough square footage available to make the numbers work to fit all that in the building. So you would be able to get like a 1,500 square foot weight room, 1,400 square foot extra space that might, if you flip flop the weight room in that space, you could probably get a wrestling mat on the floor in like 1,600 square feet. So it could kind of push numbers around a little bit. So it's more smaller spaces as opposed to another basketball court.
You gonna say something?
Yeah, I guess going back to the CTE stuff, so, you know, we have there are districts that have, you know, the fully funded CTE through Department of Ed, and those have definitely special parameters, but we've got other districts, I think, as you're saying, like, utilize some of our, what we have up there as tech, but there's also a mod tech that has, it's kind of a hybrid between a low bay and a high bay, so, and it's not quite as big as, say, what Miami Valley has, but it's kind of, if we call it a starter course or a second, you know, kind of a smaller version of it, but it still could be adequate. We've had some fit it in within the co-funded square footage, because, I mean, you know, some of the further slides, it talks about, you know, 45, 50,000, 60,000 square foot of academics. You know, we have so many classrooms, we have so many kind of science rooms and all that, but there's some flexibility within that to move some square footage around, that if you really want to add a 3,000 square foot lab with an 800 classroom next to it, it might be giving up something else or making all the classrooms 8, 10, so that you can then pick up some other square footages or some other types of spaces. And so I would say that's, you know, within the 20 tab POR that we have, program document, there's ways to move those square footages around and kind of get what you want. And then, yeah, with the gym spaces, I would say with the sizes of these facilities, it's, you know, usually one bigger gym with some small sport areas, and the high school have a few more sport areas than the middle school. But it's really more focused on one primary gym. And it's when we, I think, cross 1,000 student park per building, that would get you into like an auxiliary gym, along with I don't think we're quite to 1,000 per building yet here. So yeah, it's one main gym with the locker rooms, weight rooms, all that. But you can make some of those joint spaces and either upsize the gym a little bit or find some other things with that square footage too.
So is there like an auditorium, like an auditorium?
So it'll be the kind of like this, we'll have dedicated square footage for stage, and with the high school, you'll get dedicated support areas as far as dressing rooms, and
So it was
stage.
something that can turn on.
You can be placed in the cafeteria, it could be placed against the gym. There's, I would say it's more expensive, but there's some that open both ways, so the cafeteria and the gym. That's, I would say a lot of times it only stays open one way, not both, but And depending on the size of the cafeteria, you can tier it if you only want spaces. We've had others that take their cafeteria and with L5 money, buy the type of seats that attract and so that it feels more like an auditorium, but it's in this space here. The seats would go back during the day and use this cafeteria, and you can come out to the auditorium like space. So there's a lot of different options, and so some of that stuff, the seats would be locally funded, but if they're just sitting in the cafeteria as part of the regular square footage, it's not like you're adding square footage, you're just adding the cost of the seats, because we just don't pay for the fixed seating. If it's live as well, we don't pay for that either, but you can utilize the spaces efficiently and get a more auditorium-like space in a cafeteria. And so we've had some districts do that with the mobile retractable seats. And then like the high school, both middle school and high school come with some bleachers in their gym. It's just a matter of, middle school gym be a little smaller, with so many seats, and high school a bigger space with more seats.
So how close are we to 1,000? Does that be 1,000 per building to get the oxygen, or just that building?
What's the yeah, so it'd be 1,000. Yeah. Yeah, so the high school is only under 700 kids, so we'd have to get 1,000. That's what. Again, unless you wanted to, again, if you could figure out how much that costs and you wanted to, by the time we got to project agreement, say, hey, we'll shift in X amount of dollars to add an extra, and it could even be maybe 5,000 square feet, you can squeeze 2,000 somewhere else and move together to make a 7,000 square foot gym. I mean, it's just a matter of, if it's a secondary gym, it would probably come in all by, but it may not be 100% off, maybe some square footage that you can squeeze that somewhere else and only have to pay for a certain portion of it.
I'm thinking like too, they want to run like 2 different classes, weight class, special.
Yeah, I mean, the gym would be large enough and we'll normally have a divider curtain, so like, at least during the day, you could split it and have 2 classes running, but if you have a 3rd class or a 4th class.
Sometimes it's hard to have 2 classes. It's so loud.
Yeah, but that's how,
That's something we're looking for.
that's how we size it, it's not always easy, but that's how they're sized to have 2 side by side with their dividers that hopefully help them, but and then the other way we could be almost a classroom slash like the teaching area if needed, or the multi-purpose weight room slash specialty.
And we would have time to work on that.
Yeah, and
I mean, we don't have to decide this by the 21st, but we've got time.
Yeah,
They're good questions, but I said, now we
yeah,
can talk more through tonight, but a lot of what we're talking about, we have time to think about it.
Okay.
yeah. The bigger question that needs to answer is it the new middle school or the high school, and
Correct.
what other amenities you want to add on top of what we've already are going to go on. You'd have until later this fall, to be honest, before you'd have to come up with that, because by the time the commission approval, control board approval, project agreement, we're talking usually at probably September-ish timeline before that. And the time we do project agreement would be the time we start issuing for our New York, with the solicitor, the architect, and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, we want to know some of those details because we can hire an architect based on what we're going to go on, plus we can add any LI on top of that. So we're going to potential LI, even then we're not actually 100% committing to it, but we know what we're thinking, what you're thinking as far as extra costs or extra square footage when we hire those architects and contractors. So I mean, that gets slowly sorted out as you go through the design. Just once we start digging there, then it's until you dig through stuff and still change, or even be change orders or alternates that could come in, depending on how the budget's coming, the bids. Yep.
With all the numbers and the charts that you've seen so far, we also wanted to dig into what these sizes actually look like. So just the scale of building, scale of amenities, just different things to be added to the site, what you have here and where it could possibly go. As with the graphics and everything that you've seen so far for the comparisons, they were estimates. This is what you're seeing on the screen is a first step concept. This is not saying this is how it's going to be. It's not saying that everything here is going to get built and this is what it is. Some of these items we're showing just to show you, here's what the size of it looks like in that area. If you ever wondered what a baseball field with I think 350 out the center, 300 down the line looks like, that's what it looks like in that area there. We've already heard conversations that this is a practice field in the back, so that might not be one of the baseball fields that you can do. If we zoom out just a little bit on. Hey,
Wrong.
back one. There you go. There you go. Sorry.
I don't know how I got all
You're
that.
fine. You're good. So with this, we have a variety of things noted on here. We have the parcels all shown. You can see the white lines kind of dividing everything out. In total, you have 168.96 acres on this site. It's divided up into a variety of parcels, but that's your total. You can see the existing building over here. We have the color coding on it to correspond with what the OFCC was noting for the years, so that everything prior to 1999 is gym. So 2017 and 1999, that would remain in place, and the rest of this would be demolished. That is an option. It's not saying all of that has to be demolished. It's just where we are currently with the concepts. We want to show that just for review there. And then as Melanie and Valerie noted, once that is demolished, there would be an addition of a variety of square feet to that building to put up to the, yeah. So Melanie was just noting, so we have a gym here and also a gym here in this area. It might come down to, hey, that area, we just want to keep the gym. So we don't lose that space. Those are part of the conversations that can take place, as Valerie was noting, that once we get the defined April 21st, there's conversations that are going to take place into the fall of.
And this is a site plan, new high school, so in theory, the conversation down the road would be additions to make that the middle school, additions to and renovations to.
Correct, exactly.
And we don't have to tear anything down at once, just, I've fielded those questions before already.
Exactly.
I get rid of everything.
You can do the entire project all at once, or you can segment it out over a few years. So with this, just going over the overall, this plan, as he was just noting, does note the new high school. So it is west of the elementary, so the existing elementary here with the parking to the rear, to the front. This would remain K-4 with its parking and everything. But for the new high school, we're showing the 9 through 12 here, and then a second story element in kind of the darker shade of yellow, which would be primarily academic area in the back here. So your school would have probably looking at like a main entry here with gym, cafeteria, and then leading over to your academic side. Again, this is just conceptual.
Conceptually speaking, field house would go between, you think?
Correct. We're showing the field house over here, and this could have a variety of pieces of programming. This could be, for what we're showing here, adjacent to the stadium, could be just restrooms and concession. You could have locker rooms tied to the high school that are utilized, or you could have the locker rooms and a weight room or whatever inside that field house. Again, we're just showing this for reference of what could be added on very easily into that space. A few positives with the placement of the high school. We had heard that there is some discussion from neighbors of the sounds from the stadium. Not only planting some trees out here, but that two-story element becomes a natural barrier, sound barrier for the activities occurring on site. And also
In light.
yeah, light, you get beautiful ambient light facing to the north for the classrooms. Also with this, we're setting you up for the future. So we're not landlocking any of these buildings, even the elementary could have an addition off the backside since we're not conflicting with any of that circulation, that space. But there could be additions to the front, there could be additions to the side for the high school. Also with this, we are showing, so we've kind of applied some color on top of the existing area, showing where parking potentially could be. Bus and event parking on the north side of the stadium that could serve the high school, but after hours could serve the stadium area. So as we were driving in, we saw some buses parked along the kind of the east side there. They could all stay in that location and completely be closed off from any other traffic. So again, looking at the students, the visitors, the bus traffic.
The community, I engage, the community, I engage them, it's the park now.
Correct, yes, we're looking at a variety. So if buses aren't there yet, after hours parking for events, the staff and visitor parking, we're proposing 2 drive aisles off the back of Broad Road where you could have their own entry into that space, again, not conflicting with the bus traffic. Same for the student parking. They can have their own entry. We're showing an optional drive aisle across here, which might be required for fire access as well, but all of the circulation could happen around the building and completely be separate from that bus loop.
And in your opinion, does that alleviate some of the congestion we have off 201 when we come in? Because it's kind of
Most definitely, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we would work with your teams to further develop this. Again, it's a first step. We want to meet with transportation team, with others that you would want to see have input, and also get community feedback of their own travel through the site and what's their hangups of saying, oh, if they only did this, it would make it a much smoother transfer of their students, the pickup, the drop off, so on and so forth. So this is showing the placement here. Again, you still have a fair amount of land that would be untouched in this plan. There's a natural tree line here. We have that as a kind of a demarc between the academic side of the new build and then the athletic side here, the existing stadium, the new field house with the proper restrooms, proper concession, water, all of that stuff that it's needed. That would be a great access point and off of it may be a new main entry with a plaza that would be off of here. So people aren't parking all the way down here and then walking up that area. We know it's been widened the path there, but still you're right next to vehicle traffic. So whatever we can do to help safety, but also just the ease of people, 88 parking right there, right at the main entry, and then you're right there. So with this, again, just showing options, show the cloverleaf here with 2 baseball fields, 2 softball fields, 3 practice fields. Again, just for scale of, hey, what can fit in that western area? This would be an option here. We'd have the proper paths and circulation for this as well, but it's just a kind of an overview of first step of what could be possible. Any questions regarding this? Yes.
So if we went with this, for the middle school, could we do renovation, demolition, and construction?
Yes.
To do all 3?
I think that's all part of that plan, yes.
And then if we have to widen the road to Otterbrod, was that something that either the township or county, whoever owns it, would they do the funding for that?
We'd have to. Yeah, there are funds associated with the OFCC package for this, but we would engage with the township to go through the proper protocols and making it a joint effort to see the positives with this and taking the stress off of 201 there.
This would all be city water and sewer, is that right? Like we don't do make wells or septic or anything?
Correct, yes. Let's get to the next.
I was gonna ask if there's enough room to the south of the elementary. Down in this corner, if that road next to the current high school is removed or placed elsewhere, is there enough room in that area to get the middle school? Or it looked like that was I guess the high school in that area, so those buildings kind of all three can flow together a little better.
Are you speaking of here?
South of there, yeah, south of the elementary, yeah, right in that area before the creek. Like, if you remove that road right there going into the high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and down further, down closer to the road, like, is that a big enough area there?
Oh, into this area.
Yeah, into that area, to kind of help flow those buildings or connect there. And at least keep all the buildings, the school buildings up close on 201.
We could investigate that most definitely. Yeah, I think there's some, I will classify them as wetlands as I haven't seen the official report yet, but we would want to investigate that area.
You might be able to fit the, you might be able to fit the building. You might be able to fit the building in to get the parking all the way around and bus drop and everything else. You might have to be crossing over that area if it's considered. Sometimes drainage swales get considered, creeks get considered wetlands, so we have to investigate that. We felt like just at a first glance, it seemed like it was cutting right through the middle and it wouldn't be ideal, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. Okay, but you need this.
Yeah, you're saying over here. Yeah. We could definitely take that into consideration for just reviewing that area. Also with the placement of this, just its proximity to the stadium seemed a nice connection on that side.
So on the 21st, then we would have, like, say this is what we want. We would have to say, okay, our plan is we want to put a high school over there, and then we want to tear down all the buildings before 1999, and construct a little bit more, and then renovate the 2017 building. That's what answer we owe to OFCC.
Well, with one of the options being selected going with,
Except that over there,
yeah,
where it goes doesn't matter.
that's what I was saying.
This one.
This
Is just to make it simple for me, right? Because I'm not the smartest guy. It's basically, you gotta decide by the 21st, do you want to build a new high school or middle school? I mean,
That's a
simplify it for me.
Yeah, and I was just saying, I think maybe these next slides after we finish the site, is what, and I think we've talked about this one before, the idea of segmenting. So I think the idea would be, we're gonna, with this first project, and again, your guys' decision, but we're gonna do either the new middle school and high school, and then that's segment one, and then we'll come back at some point for segment two, and do all the stuff down with the older building and do the addition, demolish the old stuff, come back. Because there's a couple of different factors and there's pros and cons, and I think we'll go through all that, but you know, there's probably more pros, there's some pros to doing a segmented project, especially for growing districts, because I think when we come back and look at the enrollment again, if you continue to grow, when it's a 45,000 square foot addition, now it's up to 70,000 square foot addition, or it becomes a whole separate middle school maybe, like there's more options or more potentials depending on that second phase, but yeah, we would want kind of what the overall plan is, but then what is the first phase, and then that second phase would get reevaluated, the second segment would get reevaluated when that day comes to do the second segment. So yeah, you can tell us kind of which one of the big picture, but it's more important what do you want to do now, and what is the current project, and if there's a future project, we can say what it is today, but it's likely going to change by the time we get to it. So. Yeah.
So this second slide, I won't spend too much time on. It's just a closer view and rotate it so north is up of the new high school, giving you some square feet information, but it's the same information that you saw just closer up. That's it. And this slide, very similar to the high school, but now it's focusing on the middle school. So square feet's noted here, it's similar design orientation. It is very, very close to the scale and size of the high school for what would be constructed. It's only off by a few thousand square feet. But we would use the same design elements proposed that you would have your natural sound barrier here with your academic wing, then main entry, gym, cafeteria, so on and so forth. You lose that student parking, that wouldn't be needed, but you can still have a drive aisle connection over to those spaces, utilize the bus drop-off area pickup, and then after hours event parking for the stadium there. And then this is just a closer view of that same thing, blown up and showing additional information with each of the elements. Again, you still have options for athletic fields that don't impact your current shot put discus, your field house concessions. This is shown as a size, but again, we'll look at program, work with the district to figure out what indeed that becomes. You can see the kind of entry plaza that we've talked about previously. There could be another one over here as needed as well. Any questions? Jump back to the presentation.
So I'm not sure who to direct this question to, but I did want to ask, I'd be silly not to. So we don't have any option of any longer, or we're not considering any option to put a school down in Carriage Trails 2.0 on any particular piece of land? Is that an option?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, the only thing that would fit down there according to the plan that's available would be an elementary school. And the developer has no interest at this time putting in a school over there, my understanding.
Yeah, there was an offer on the table though. Have we looked into that anymore?
I spoke to him a couple weeks ago. And he has no
I don't
interest.
think the space is big enough, is it?
You only have, I think, 18 acres. I mean, you could tell me about it. I don't think you can build much of a building with the size of the land there.
Like K-2 or something, no. I'm not sure that, unless you don't think the middle school might fit in there, but, I mean, how much acreage does our middle school take? Just put the footprint of where it is. Or the shape that you have, you know, planned for right now.
We're doing some rough calculations on.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, you don't have to necessarily answer that now, but it would be good to have I mean, I can do some math myself, but
I mean, we would have to be shown the property available for us to study it as part of our work. We need to be shown the property available and have it as something that the district's considering purchasing, or where that procurement would happen. To look at how it would fit or do a test fit on that property. The length of time that it would take to go through the purchase of that property might impact the scheduling that CC is talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think right now the K through 4, I think, fits in this current facility based on the current enrollment, but again, I think if we talk about the idea of segmenting and say in 5 years, or whatever, we come back to segment 2, if the enrollment has continued to grow and you can figure out a property and you wanted to build a K2, as long as you own the property, that's something we could look at, but I would say potentially in another segment, not necessarily right now. And if, the current plan could say this is a K4, and it's gonna be the K4 for this segment, but if again, the enrollment grows and changes and it makes sense to build a K2 somewhere and make this a 3-4 or something else, we'll investigate all that, but I would say probably in a later segment. I think at the moment, this facility can hold out within K4, the other facility can hold out at the 5-8 or the 9-12, and then it's just a matter of one new building, and I would say enrollment wise being less than 3,000 kids, and we're usually about one building for every 1,000 or so kids. And so I think this would get us to a third. The current plan is that they're building, if your enrollment continues to grow, and you say push 4,000 or 5,000 kids in so many years because it continues to grow, then that could be another discussion. But yeah, I would say nothing's, as you still work with us, there's always ways to explore other options, but I think, yeah, you'd have to own the property, know what you need, and you'd have to have enough kids to actually make it make sense for us to own the building, which I don't think that's the way it is.
And then, a last question I was gonna ask is, do either of these plans for either a new high school or a new high school, do either of them carry room for the administrative team to come back and be housed in one of those new buildings?
The square footages that you're looking at on the site plan and what are part of the co-funded amount do not, but that could be an LFI that's explored and gets added on to the school. There are districts that frequently do that. Is a project LFI, they'll add funding to it to be able to build out those spaces. That hasn't been studied yet. I think the first thing we were trying to do is just tackle the middle school, high school piece, and then over the coming months, we can explore further LFIs, so we could add that option to the list if you'd like us to study that.
Can I ask again about this timeline? So April 21st, we tell you middle school or high school. Then like you said in the summer, we get some plan, like kind of.
So the state will do some work on their end.
Okay.
Once you say middle school, high school,
Okay.
they'll take some time to get their new updated funding allocations and approve and say, okay, Bethel, here's the master plan that's ready for you to sign. And I think that's the fourth meeting we need after June. We're officially agree and sign off on the new master plan. And then there's the going through securing architect and CMR, construction manager at risk for the rest of the project and getting like the final team on board. So all of that takes kind of through the summer. But while that's happening, we do have the contract to help with master planning. So while the state's doing their thing, we can continue helping to define the LFIs, with price tags to them. You can narrow what your priorities are, talk to potential, if there's donors for athletic facilities and things like that, and work up kind of shopping list, and then say when the state comes back and they're ready to go, then you're kind of ready to go yourselves and say, okay, we know we're going to do these 4 things and we're going to incorporate them into the master plan as the architect then starts designing everything.
We usually estimate time for groundbreaking or start building. Is that be a year from now?
Yeah, I would probably say at some point next summer would be my guess at the earliest. And I would say the commission, so April the June board meeting, commission controlling board, we'll probably start putting together our team. So like I'm the planner. I do all this prep work ahead of time. We have a project management staff, and so we'll select the project manager. We'll probably come out to the district in say August or end of July, early August, to have a kickoff meeting to say, here's the project, here's the team, our team at least, put together the selection process for the architect, engineer, architect, or A&E contractor, and start issuing those RFQs, the request for qualifications. And so, because at the same time, there's the project agreement we have to put together, so there's kind of several formal steps that have to go through our boards, our commissions, our control boards, project agreements, all those things have to be in place before we can sign the contract with the architect who's actually designed the building, or the contractor is gonna build the building. But we'll try to clear those up as quickly as we can, over the, I would say more like August, September, October timeline, as far as issuing stuff, shortlisting, interviews, because we can't do stuff ahead of approvals from our own state people, and get too far of ourselves. But then I would say we'll issue what we think is a tentative schedule as part of that. That will then get refined by the architect based on their design timeline, and then refined by the contractor based on their understanding of the designs, and we can have stuff. If there's a need for an early site package or even a ceremony or groundbreaking at some point as they start to need utilities or other stuff. So, I mean, there's probably ways to get something starting potentially next summer. It's just a matter of how much, and we don't ever want to commit our time or a date, because it's all going to come down to how quickly the architect can design stuff, and we don't want to rush the architect.
Right.
And then how quickly the contractor can get out there. But there's, there may be something that they could do, but there's probably not going to be a lot of vertical construction. So probably later in the year, early 28, even, just depending on what needs to get done across the site. I'd rather pick a further out date and be able to move it earlier than pick a date and have to move it late because something happens. And so we'll give some early estimates, but then once the whole team's on board, they'll refine that schedule and get a better sense. But we can ballpark based on what we've built in the last few years of this size, of this scale, in this area, when we think it's going to be able to be moved into. So.
I'm sure that's my question. We will get asked a lot. I kind of
Yeah, we can.
just want a little bit of a, I know it's totally estimate, and I know
Yeah,
it's start off, and I know there's a lot of steps.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we'll say at least a year to 16 months of design, depending on what type of design it is. Especially new construction, make it a little faster, renovations may have a little more tweaking, looking and investigating, and then construction wise, 24 to 30 months, just depending on the type of building and how much stuff you need to prep, utility rooms, all that kind of stuff. But again, the contractor can say, oh, we'll do it in this many times, this many months, or share off this few months. So we got to go a little, that's right, a little longer, and not knowing lead times and stuff have dwindled and gotten better for some things, but you just never know what the market's going to do with this shift and change. And something else may come up that's not taking longer than expected. I already hadn't seen it take as long in the last few years, so yeah, we'd rather be a little conservative, but yeah, it's going to be, 3 to 4 years before, you're really in that building at this point, because of the time it took for the rules and getting the money flowing and then getting the people on board and actually help people, so. That's, we might have felt before we would have originally been on community based deals for policies, so that is still, it's still a positive thing. So yeah, you'll be in the building probably before you're talking to people based on prior policies and features. So yeah, that's the big bonus here right now.
So if you want to pull it forward. So this is the timing question. We put on here new high school, it would be the same pros and cons for a new middle school. We feel like there's more pros for the new high school in general, but obviously that's for you all as a board and the community to decide what you want to do. So if you said to us, no, we want to include an extra slide for this with the middle school community presentation, you could do that too, but it's all virtually the same information. So the options are to build a new building now. And then, as Valerie was talking about, segment 2, in approximately 5 or so years, come back, the state would reassess your enrollment, probably redefine what the master plan is. You actually had a master plan when this building was built, the elementary school, and we're back here redefining that because of the growth. So the same thing might happen. And so you would hold on any demolition. The middle school would move into the high school, kind of get some elbow room, use whatever spaces they need there, and then there'd be just vacant space for a while that if you continue to grow, you'd have that capacity to move back into it as needed. And then the state will come back, reassess enrollment, redefine, and then you would build that. And it would continue to be co-funded at local 20%, state 80%. Your local share, right now you have $6 million in this current master plan returning back to you. So $6 million being 20% of the project, I don't think you grow enough to the point where you would have to raise your own funds. I think you'd be covered even if you grew quite a bit. Yes, plus inflation, so it'd be close. The other option is to build the entire master plan at one time. It wouldn't literally be built at the same time, it would still be phased. You'd build the new building, get yourself some swing space, move the students into that building, and then you'd come back and start the next project. So it would be done over a series of multiple years. It might take 5 years to get all of it designed and completed versus 3 years for the new, just the new building. If you did that, you would have all the students in new space now, but the state would be done. Like they've reviewed, you built out their master plan. Maybe 20 years, they might come talk to you again. So if you want to scroll, I think I've already touched on a little bit, but we did some pros and cons and cost implications. So the current master plan has a $6 million on the high school version return fee on PP credit at project completion. So when you get that, say you built the whole thing right now, when you get that back, you're required to put it towards debt service. So
I would say with the idea of segmenting, there's some extra money left over, so we don't need to utilize all the credit earned here to cover the new building. I would say some of our other districts that have that much left over have been saving it to the next phase, so that at the next phase, there's $6 million less you have to raise to cover your local share. If you're getting, say, $100,000 back, okay, most districts will take the $100,000 and put it to debt. But with $6 million, if another district has about $20 million left over from their project, they're saving that and would apply it at the next phase. And so we'll keep an account and a record of that, saying that we only use X amount from the new elementary into the time of the next segment. You know, it may cover the majority of it. I would say between inflation and maybe enrollment growth, rather than not having to raise anything, you only have to raise a couple billion versus raising another $20 million. Like it's still going to be probably a lot less than most others. Maybe you'll swing it in internally or be some sort of cops type agreement that if you need to raise to a given line or something, and not necessarily still have to go out to the vote, because it could still cover the vast majority of that future project. It's just depending on how long it takes to come back, or when you guys are ready to come back, and then with inflation, how much that other new building or renovation is going to cost at that point. So, or another 100 more kids or however. So that's also all the things would change it, but we would just kind of keep a tab, or you'd have stored credit to say to use at the next phase. Don't have to spend another $6 million to get the next project. You have that much supply. So,
and the $6 million credit is what's left in the master plan right now after both the projects would be done.
yeah, I think it's more.
Yeah, so if you only did one project, you'd have 6 plus whatever the cost of the project was. It's in there.
Yes, I think it was only 11 or 12 million over.
So just as an example of inflation, if it was only 4% per year, that compounds each year. So over 5 years, that would be 21.5 degrees for the second phase. First phase would obviously already be done. So that would eat away at that credit. And then if the enrollment grew and the margin got bigger, that would eat. Option B, doing everything right now, any enrollment increases over the next 5 years or so, we are planned at 10 years, but we only can plan for what we know of. There's a large development and everything that's accounted for in enrollment projections. But if someone else comes in and says, hey, we're going to do the same size development, like that's not accounted for. So if there were another spike in enrollment, there would not be there would not be any state funding left. So if you needed to do another new building or do an addition on every building, you'd be going out for a bond issue, raising $20 million on your own. So it's safer to wait But waiting is hard because you have students then that aren't getting into their new spaces designed for them for another 5 years. So that's the decision that you all get to make with the information we provide when we can't tell you what to do on that one. No, just outline those pros and cons. So again, if there are other things that you'd like to have considered when you're talking about this between yourselves, or if you want to add to this presentation for next week, please let us know.
I'd say, I think the other thing, since assuming you segment and you don't tear down the older portions of the building, if you're able to put all the middle school kids into the high school portion and even flow into, have some wiggle room in the current middle school. I think when I first came out there, the administration was in the old 1920s portion of the building, so you could bring back the administration to that portion for now. And I would say even at some point in the future, on that segment 2 project, I don't know if you really want to stay in the 1920s building, but if you wanted to keep, I mean, there are ways to keep portions of that building if you really wanted to keep a portion of it for administration and not necessarily build a new building or try to move it into the new building, the new buildings. But if it makes sense to keep a little bit more, or since it's kind of a long skinny thing, if you chop off the middle section and demolish that for parking and circulation, but you wanted to keep the 1920s or 40s, whatever those older additions to the end, south end. If it makes sense to keep those for administration or keep the old auditorium because of the nostalgia of it or historic or whatever, we can chop up the building so you can keep that. You'd have to pay for your own kind of upkeep and just renovations needed, but we would have to go to the building. We could keep portions of it for administration or the auditorium as another gathering space or community space. So there's other options that would again, 1918. But yeah, 1918 portion. Maybe even stuff beside it, but yeah, there's ways to selectively demo if it makes sense, and keep portions of it. In the meantime, between 1 and there's time between 1 and 2, you can repurpose some of that for other things until temp comes, and it would give you some swing space if you're going faster than predicted before we come back. So there's
Do we have to, does anything have to be done on it? Like, is there like require,
no, nothing. At this point, if you segment and you say, oh, all we want to do is build a new high school or new middle school, whichever one, we'll still show kind of what's called the complete plan. So we still just show what we want to do eventually with the whole building, all the buildings, but we'll also carve out what we call segment 1. If your segment 1 just tells us we want to build a new X building, that's all you have to do. And all the rest of that plan would get updated and revised at segment 2 and be subject to change, yeah. And in the meantime, if you could use a swing space, or it could become more crowded than we did, or anticipate more administration back in, and save on renting some other spaces. All those things can happen in those interim years. We can go back to 17.
I don't do too much because I don't want Todd like being mad at us because he's had it too. He's only giving us the stare down.
Yeah,
when I get the charge, I usually have to.
Yeah, as I say, there's pros and cons in keeping water buildings, and so at some point we want to come back and address them all. But yeah, in the interim for a few more years, it doesn't hurt to have a little room until that next portion is built, and then if you can build off on the north end, the 2017 edition, and then come back and demolish the south end. And like I said, if there's something that makes sense to keep, great. If not, you can just tear it on that. You can tear it on out.
Then it's like, so if we go with Iron Rod, go closer to there, when would that road have to be widened before we started, or?
It would come down to, I mean, so what we would recommend is there's a traffic study that just went down with the next projects, and so it'll tell you what needs to be done, and we do put a little more money into those. I would say it's usually not 100% covered because our money is mostly focused on the buildings, so we try to focus all of our money on the buildings. But yeah, that would be probably discussion with probably the county township, as far as who wants what land and how early it's I'd say, even as you start to, before you get to the project or as you start the selection, there's some systems you guys do have with the local authorities and say, hey, we're thinking about this. What would you want? What would you like to see? How early would you like to see it? Because sometimes our relationship has conversations with the local jurisdictions or traffic studies to even the fire departments and say, you want to fire, you want this or that around the new buildings because in how long, I would say it's a nice site, a big site's nice, but then that becomes more and more roads. So how many roads do we want around the buildings and how much circulation slash space do you want? And how much does the fire department want, and, you know, first responders, and so those are all early conversations, even before you have the set building, if you just have kind of general locations of where you want to put stuff, they may have some thoughts or ideas, where they want to see things, and that can always, at the end of the day, come back and say, if they want extra roads or parking. Again, we co-fund so much, and we don't want to scare people with a bunch of outliers, but there's always a chance that somebody's gonna want more co-fund. And so it doesn't hurt to have those conversations earlier than later. But again, that's not gonna be until later this fall, that kind of number, or potential for these kind of things, depending on what the local jurisdiction say.
And timing for segment 2. So let's say we decided to only do a segment. So we're going to choose to build a new school, whatever that is, a high school or a middle school, which means that all of the renovations are in segment 2. So no renovations happen. And let's say we're finished with the new building in 3 years. So at the end of that 3rd year, could we decide, hey, we're ready for segment 2, or do we have to then wait for the OFCC to come back to us to talk about, now we want to finish up all the renovations?
So what I would suggest, and I'll probably say it again, once we get to the start of the segment 1 project. So segments, so like the look, I talked about earlier on the policy, we have what we call the priority order investment policy. And so based on statute and based on policy, there's an order in which we fund districts, and low wealth and lapse districts are kind of the highest priority. But then beyond that, there is what we call subsequent segments, and so they do have some priority. But the caveat with that, we can only fund a certain percentage of our appropriation to subsequent segments, and so on average, we get 600 million every 2 years. We can allocate 150 million of that to subsequent segments, so a quarter of our appropriation. So every year we're funding 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4 subsequent segments every year, just depending on how big they are, project-wise, project size. And so we have a subsequent segment queue of about 20 to 25 districts right now. So I would suggest as soon as we start the segment 1, tell us, hey, let's go, we want to go already get back online for segment 2. And that way you're already back online. And if we happen to get to you in 5, I would say it's probably going to be at least 5 years. I wouldn't wait till the end of the project to do it. I would go ahead and get back online right away and say, because you already have a credit incurred, you may or may not need to raise more money. It would be, awkward for us as well, because then, there may not be maybe a risk of having to raise some more money, but even if you have to raise a little bit of money, you hopefully have success in passing, you can work that project. But I would go ahead and get back in line as soon as we kind of officially start segment 1, get back in line for segment 2. And if we get to you too quickly, you'll stay in line and just tell us, hey, you want to wait another year. Otherwise, it could probably be 5 or 6 years. I would say at least, just depending on how quickly those other districts ahead of you move or don't move. Because some have been sitting in that line for 2 or 3 years and keep telling us no. That's also in the time right now where some districts aren't wanting to go out there at all. So they're just pushing on. Others are ready to go, so we're moving through them quickly. But yeah, I would just we'll get you back in line, I would say, very quickly after you start segment 1, so that you're in the queue. And that way, if it does take, if we can only fund 2 or 3 or 5, sometimes 4 or 5 a year, and it's 20 a year, that's probably going to be at least 5 years. So that would be my suggestion, and then we'll work through it because of the way the funding works. As we move through those, we'll try to get to you and say, hey, you're a year or 2 out, or hey, these other districts had you tell us that no, you have your credit when you want to move, say next year. I'll probably a little more heads up in this year because the policy changes a little bit later than we get anticipated, but give you probably 9 months, a year notice. Say, hey, we think we can get to you next year with our funding. Are you guys ready? And we go through the whole planning process again with updated enrollment. Because it's a renovation component, we'd probably do an updated scope for the assessment. or at least reevaluate these assessment scopes, and then that demarcation on it. What do we want to keep versus not keep? We can, I would say, continue to study that for the next few years and have some ideas of what makes sense. Know if you're going to keep portions, know where the utilities are, because that's always the biggest hurdle for us. If you're keeping the 1990, say you keep the 99 gym, but its utilities are the 68 building, so like now you're gonna have to redo utilities and other things. So like, to be honest, it gives you guys, if that's the plan, it'll give you guys more time to really study about that. And what we try to give you guys a little bit of heads up, but we'll think about that in the next few years before we come back to you. So that's keeping portions and doing partial demos is great, but it's also can be challenging depending on how loads are connected and where they get fed mechanically. And you're being to be a big help on this.
So speaking of that, and I guess this is my last question. If we're waiting on the renovations and let's say something happens to one of the mechanical pieces of that building that's going to get renovated, because we're in line, do we get credit then for if we would need to expend some of our local funds to do something that would be done during that renovation piece? Do we then get credit for that as we move into that next segment?
Yeah, so the one that we added for ELP, which is what you guys built this building under, is the idea that between segments, because we know there's typically right now a 5 or so year wait. If whether it's in the 2017 or even the 99 or even one of the other additions that is on the fringe or maybe kept, then there is you have to reapply to ELP, but it's a poor resolution application. And we can rerun the master plan, update it, do this kind of the same thing again, depending on how long out it is, or how far it is from this current project's documents. But yeah, there's ways. I would say just give us, as much notice as possible, because it does take a little bit of time to do that component. But yeah, if there's a major system or a large boiler or a heating component or something that's
what I'm thinking about.
I would say of a substantial size, a decent size. I mean, if it's a couple fixtures and valves, no. It's gotta be of a certain value. We're addressing kind of a major system, but yeah, I would say just let us know. And because we'd be working on segment 1, at that point, if there's things that come up, you could tell your project manager, they would tell me, and we could reconvene and say, hey, let's look at this and see if there's a way to get credit for it and add that onto the credit you've already agreed that is being used. So
Don't say. I could use it right now. It's there.
So if we rolled into, after 3 years into that next segment, we'd go with the existing enrollment numbers?
we'd run into a whole nother enrollment reduction. So in 5 years, whenever, I'll just say 5 years, for segment 2. We run a new projection, and so if the current projection, how many kids are in the current one, but if the new one says 4,000 kids, we rerun how big this addition would be on the other building, or if this building now needs an addition, or building, or it makes sense to build a whole fourth building. Like we rerun that based on all the enrollment up to that point. So if you get 3 more years of enrollment and continue to grow over the next 3 years, that 10-year projection now, instead of looking at 2036, we're looking at 2040. Sounds crazy, but sounds what's up. It makes everyone feel older, but or 2041, something like that. So we'll be looking at another further update that if you continue to grow, that number is now going to be bigger. And it would impact the size of the addition or keeping more space. Still change some of the things, but yeah, we every new project with every new project agreement, there's a new projection. So we want that projection to be less than a year old. We sign on that.
So it could impact, it could make the middle, say we went to high school, it could make the middle school renovation maybe smaller, or it could change the elementary, and it might end up being where we have to get out of the elementary.
We could all those different things we investigate. So right now, the K4 pretty much fits in the current building based on the enrollment projections. But if say you want to move it back to K5, or if the K4 now needs an addition, and again we can look at this lots of different ways. But if you don't want to add on to this, we would move those kids around on paper and make the addition over there larger. Because if you can make the capable fit here without needing an extra classroom too, we'll leave this one alone if we don't really want to touch it. But build that square footage somewhere else, because on paper, we need to account for those kids. And we would show them somewhere else in the plan. And it will make a note saying distribution is a little bit different than what we have here, but if you want to, we don't want to add anything here. And build, 1,000 extra square feet somewhere else, whatever that is. Any questions?
So the last thing we need from you all then is just feedback. If there's any changes you'd like to see, I know this was a lot of information thrown at you in a short amount of time. If you have questions for the week, you want to reach out, ask any questions, or if you want us to make adjustments for the community meeting. If you said, hey, we know which plan we think we want, can you just present that plan and have the other one kind of in your back pocket and show what we want, get the feedback on that versus showing two, like whatever level of detail you want us to share. If you say that it was too much information to go into the programming, POR comparisons for the number of classrooms, just show you more high level stuff, like anything, Taylor, whatever you'd like to see that presentation look like.
So we do that discussion now, like the pros and cons of the.
I can give feedback now if you have it, or you can give feedback now, or you could email them, or I think they're just asking, I mean, because we know the timeline's a timeline. Want to get this in front of you, and then you gotta, there's a meeting tomorrow, and then you've got the community meeting on the 14th. So it's plenty of time for discussion. So, but I think, you'll take questions now, correct?
Of course.
So yeah, ask away.
Well, I think right now I lean toward the high school because it just makes the most sense. It gets us closer to the stadium. It takes away from all the traffic back and forth. It's all the kids using that stadium there. So I don't know if everybody would be prepared to make a decision tonight, or I think that's something that we've had in the back of our minds leading up to this. That is the option that seems to make the most sense at this time. But I don't know if this reason. What will digest all of this, or
I think the sake of the students is the huge impact of them being close to the field house, because it is dangerous. It's dangerous for everyone to be, all the time walking.
Running around the parking lot.
Yeah, like constant, coaches, they're here all the time. I agree that the high school makes the most sense. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of the community too. Like I was at an event last night here and got several complaints about handicap parking. I hear it all during the season too in the fall, but my first event of the spring being out here, and just a lot of comments that how dangerous it is. Some like one here in Compton, because the shop and business is so far from parking and stuff, like the track, like it's just, you have to go up the hill, walk up, it's just,
They complain from the start, it's hard, not ADA compliant.
yeah.
Any factor to get to our new stadium. I really like the thoughtfulness of the setback on Eddie Broad. I think it really does improve the site and stadium to have that second story to buffer, to just make it really nicer for the community. And I don't think traffic flow on Eddie Broad is going to be bad, because you can go both ways. You can go out at Broad to Pisgah and go out at Broad 201. So I think it manages the flow of traffic better. I'm a strong proponent in high school.
And I think too, because then like softball, baseball would be this way, and so the high school's over here. We desperately need baseball and softball, he's,
Get 'em on site.
yes, we need them on site. And so I think that's the thing is if, you know, the kids could park here and then go straight out,
And then the
for
middle-
everything, yeah.
And then the middle school utilize the old football field. And maybe do the track days for the track.
Which they're using that now, yeah, the middle school uses, so maybe if they had, we could put a track around that,
And
then
they're
the
right
middle
here.
school track.
So that gets you on. And then hopefully maybe the high school would get an actual auditorium where they can do the musicals and stuff with the
Yes.
stage and all that. Put up and down chairs, everything.
I think that'd be great to apply, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, auditorium needs to be, our
Dedicated.
musicals and our band and choir is outstanding here.
And then-
I hate that it's in the cafeteria.
Yeah, and then a dedicated cafeteria and a whole separate thing. And then,
If you wanted an auditorium, how many seats do you think you want that to sit?
How many
For auditorium,
seats would
how
you want?
big we, how, you know about how many people come, how many seats do you sit out in the cafeteria for like a musical or band?
This will versus. It's fun.
So probably
So if we went
over
500,
500.
500. But wouldn't that be nice if you didn't have to tear down the cafeteria?
It's fun.
No, that's why.
We can look at what size that would mean and the dollar figure that would be too.
Yeah, because she does multiple productions, so you don't have to have 700 seats.
And we have a band that's growing today. Same thing with band when they have many concerts too.
Especially if they have union clients.
Yep.
or even the band equipment and stuff too. And they
Yeah.
have to lug all the band.
Oh, yeah, because they have to walk the band.
From middle school all the way over.
Yeah, they have to walk. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so many different things, and then they'd be right behind the field house for classes, they could do health class. If we did drones class, it'd be right there, weight training, and then, they could utilize the field house for, inclement weather practices, community center. The van will have us transporting, and their equipment.
Well, and the athletic trainers, that's a big complaint that I've been getting is that they have no space out
They
there.
need more space, they need triple the space.
Yeah, they need triple the space inside, we're gonna treat kids in the hallway,
But there's no over in this building.
but, and there's nothing out here for that.
No,
But luckily, like, the football coach lets them use, there's no running water. It's-
so it's another, is that an LFI or is that?
I'd say that there is some training space as part of the athletics. I would also say we've had a lot of our districts, working with their local health clinics or, hospitals.
Yeah.
To expand their, phys ed or their training areas, wellness centers, or to have just actual health clinics. So I don't know which one would be around here for you guys, but, that kind of health-based student or school-based health clinics, that kind of expand not only the clinic, but also into the athletic, physical, support for those, athletes. So I think, I feel like Fairborn was working on Kettering, or some of these are Kettering, or Dayton Children's, or some of these other ones. I think Xenia has a Dayton Children's, health clinic within their middle school they built, so like, in that, there's a school-based healthcare alliance, I think, out there that helps connect school districts with the providers, because there's a lot of extra paperwork that goes with it being an actual health clinic, but even if it's not the full health clinic, like providing services for treatment athletics, if someone out there, or help sponsor that square footage, or help provide some equipment or materials that go into those. So it's not on our website yet, but as we update the design in 2026, we had talked with some of those alliances to help provide some of the resources on there on our website. But yeah, there's groups out there that can help connect you guys if there's something that you want to think about. And again, that would be something that could be developed over the course of the planning and design. And at some point, if we can, if partnership comes to fruition, we can always figure out a way to incorporate it in the project. Makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of a growing trend that we're seeing with the local hospitals or children's hospitals working with school districts. For kind of that wraparound services or services near them, so that you don't have to travel, get treated or fed.
Then like you said, that like the soccer field and stuff would be right there, so soccer practice, the track practice, cross country, baseball, softball, all of that would be all in the centralized area. So they just come out of school and they go right out to the field, to whatever sport they're practicing.
And we could have like, so, I thought that we were moving to the CBC very soon, and so, our crowds are gonna be bigger. Bigger schools, like right now, our gym, some basketball games I went to, all the space in there. That's kind of been a concern. Is that we are moving to a bigger division.
Yeah, we're gonna have bleachers and stuff too for both home and away games, or visitors and our side. And then if you move the entrance to the other end, like you had it on the map, then they're right there with the school, the parking, and the entrance is all central located.
You have a better flow of traffic, you're not walking over your whole school district to get to.
Because it is, I mean, kids, staff, all the, like Friday nights, have over the rest, all the big kids, all the, everyone, it's just constant.
Sunday.
Yep.
I think it's best to have that.
So I don't know. Does anyone else have anything about the high school being renewed? Construction?
I was curious if anybody had a thought the other way.
For middle school?
Yeah, in middle school instead of high school.
My only concern is Agawam Road, because it is dangerous. There's drop offs when you get to Pisgah Road. It's not wide enough. You're going to have more high school drivers, which are just beginners. If you have a middle school in that area, you're not going to have you're going to have adults driving in that area and not so many high schoolers. So that's a concern for me that's a pro for me for middle school versus a high school. Especially if we're going to have two entrances on Agawam. That's just one thing. And always remember that golfers are always going to be offside. Swimmers will always be offside. And yeah, the cross country can run around for practice, but typically, their meets will be offside too. So while we bring the baseball team here and soccer, that's all great. The more on the campus, that's better. I know there's a lot going on, but it does build some independence when they're offside, as well as they learn to plan better. There is some value in that. So to me, that's not a big deal, but it's on either option. So, just, you don't know what's in the future. So it's good to know there might be some land still available later on. And in general, and I'm gonna wait and see what the facilities committee, what their general thoughts are. We have a group of 14 people on that. Three of them are here tonight, and I want to hear what the community has to say, because I'm here to represent the community. I can have my own opinion, but I'm here to see what they want to do next. And the only thing is about the high school is people will say, well, I just paid for that 6 years ago. In 2018, that just opened. So people are going to remember that they just paid for that. They're going to go, wait, we're paying for another new high school. So, I'm not sure how that's going to go. Just something to consider as well. But that's my general feedback.
So Natalie's point for Agawam, could we also still do an entrance on 201 if we find that Agawam isn't feasible? If it just wouldn't work?
Yes, the entrances to the site, you could still go off 201. You could also just do one entrance and combine it. So there's only one access there, and one of our thoughts in the student drivers was, I think we've heard a lot of comments about when we met with some of the staff early on about how people are, both students and staff are like pulling in front of others on the 201 because it's just so crowded. So we were thinking maybe getting the student drivers onto a smaller street that isn't as crowded would make their entrance and exit from the site safer. Although if there's ditches and things that need road improvements, those are certainly things to be considered too as far as safety goes. So I think there's still a lot of investigation that can be done, and ultimately, you know, the building, the road placements, the access don't have to be anywhere where we have them shown right now. They can be around as the plan develops.
Let's say, a lot of kids are going down Vista, Autumn, and back up 201 now because of 201 being so busy, it's so hard to pull out onto. So for the younger drivers, they're actually going backwards. They're actually making roads to get into and they are going on 201.
Well, it was poorly designed from the beginning, so this might be an opportunity to fix that, correct that, come up with a better solution, so. Yeah, that can be done either way, so. But again, hopefully there is funding for widening that road and making it better, but you know, once again, another taxpayer thing that'll probably happen, unless there's funding that we can dip into for widening and improving that road.
I think the allowance is $300,000 in the plan, so it helps, but it's not gonna pay for that large of a road, except like if you were to do that one to or something like that. But we can study what that would cover, and if you ended up doing a traffic light somewhere, like that all plays into the numbers as well. So if
When you went
there's
to the middle school route, we couldn't do the auditorium stuff, right? That's usually in high school. Yeah, yeah. Is that? We really need them.
We don't advise or whatever you want, but yeah, it's in 90% of the time, it's in the high school or it's a middle or a capable. The auditorium, we don't see too many in the lower grades, but it's not unheard of today. But yeah.
I think it would help us too to host like more, because I know cross country, like they've had some of their meets here. They can host some more, have that parking out there. I know tracks through the TRC, which is a huge meet this year. I think that'll help bring in some too, is us being able to host. And I know with the auditorium, you can rent it out. Like I know dance groups and other groups, like people can come rent it. And I think just to have district staff meetings, I heard you guys are like pretty much outgrowing the cafeteria when you guys meet for your.
Yeah, this is full.
Oh, wow.
We're staff meetings.
Yeah, I heard it's like wall to wall in there. It's like an auditorium would probably be a nice, you know, to have those staff meetings or when it's all districts.
And that's the discussion. I mean, you can, like Mike Ballard said, LFIs are yours, right? You can choose what you want to do. You can have 2 auditoriums.
But the thing that's different about the LFIs this time is we're not talking about a bond issue. Usually when you're talking about LFIs and a project, you're talking about a funding mechanism that's coming from your community. So we're talking about a different concept where LFIs, we're gonna have to think outside of the box. It's not gonna be tied to a bond issue. So we're gonna have to think about things a little differently. So it's costing out all the options, seeing how much that is, and then figuring out how do we pay for all of the things and what's the priority and which things do we want to tackle, so. But I think it's great to list them all out and then cost them out and go from there.
Yeah, that would be the good community input too.
Yes.
What LFI they see and what the top priorities are.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, you've heard me say this before, nothing drives people more crazy than building something than tearing it up 3 years later to build something new.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why they're here. It's really good here to plan ahead, you know. hopefully when this is done, you've got a 10, 20-year plan and what it looks like. There's your footprint for it. You don't waste money and you just carry on and do things that are important. The athletic, you talk about athletics, we're switching to CBC 27, and you're gonna have more people here that we have currently.
It's already overflowed now.
It's already filled.
We've got visitors sitting on the home side because there's not enough room for the
Yeah.
visitors. to-
Which causes problems.
It does. Those problems end up in my office some days.
And then the parking, it's all the way down the side of the building over here.
Yeah.
And the whole student parking and the elementary school. And then there's people everywhere. And it's just
It's dangerous.
It is.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Could the staff be told like, is that something that you could do this week, like a Google form or something, just to see like district or? I know you said you got middle school, but is that something that's like?
You took input from the entire staff.
Yeah, we've met with all of the staff, gotten input on what they, thought the facilities were lacking, what they needed in terms of space and other things. We didn't talk a ton about LFIs at that time. We did do a general survey for people that could come to meetings, kind of fill in some questions.
And it was in that document, and this is before you got on the board, so
Okay.
make sure you get a copy of it.
But I don't think you got huge response, right? Wasn't that survey that went out? There wasn't a whole bunch of people that.
There weren't a whole bunch of people that filled out the survey because there were actually a ton of people that came to meetings, which was great. So most of it was.
They met individually.
Oh, that's great.
And we use those notes to look at the programs too, when we were figuring out the special ed spaces and some of the other intricacies. We use the notes we have. Got that. So they're not fully vetted, but I feel like they're fair post.
And then next week we'll get the communities. But
You know, it might be nice to have a list of what is considered an LFI. So that when we talk about building a high school, the community idea of what they think that is, auditorium, all these things you need, why don't we get those? But if you explain to them what the community needs to fund, to have what they really want, I think that helps also give them some perspective and allows for some feedback specifically about what's important to them.
We can have a slide on that.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't say we need more classrooms, but they have very strong feelings about athletic fields or, where my kid's gonna change with the auditorium. So I think that might be nice to have just kind of an example of what that would entail when you have a wish list.
Isn't there some, isn't there some that are kind of like shared where part of it's academic, but then part of it might be an LI, so split the cost there? That also option.
Yeah, there's something that we call an integral LFI. So if you get a certain amount of square footage co-funded, and if you want to build bigger than that, it doesn't really matter to the state what you're building. It could be auditorium space, it could be classroom space, anything that's above that square footage is locally funded, but there's no way to parcel that out and say this portion of that building is this amount. So you don't bid it separately. It's all part of the integrated building construction, so you assign a square footage value. So if your LFI is 1,000 square feet, whatever the cost per square foot ends up being of the building, that gets assigned to your 1,000 square feet, gets allocated.
Yeah, and I think, well, as I said, like, when it comes to like the phys ed stuff, we, in the programming, allocate so many locker rooms and so many, like restroom showers, kind of stuff, that goes to locker rooms, like offices in the gym space. So like, there is a cap on how much, but like a lot of the flex 21, because that's meant to cover the phys ed classes, not football, baseball, basketball, that kind of stuff. So, but those can end up being joint uses. So during the day, it can be for phys ed, but then in the evenings, it's for your athletics. And if you want an extra locker room or two, that's where we sit. If the program says 15,000 square feet athletics, which you end up with 17,000 overall, and your 2,000 square feet over on the building, it just comes out of the cost per square foot LFI component. But yeah, there's some things that could be one thing during the day and something else in the evenings because of athletics or the joint spaces like center event spaces during the day. One thing for something else at night. I would say like media centers and what things that we're seeing, libraries, the other word for that. Some districts are downsizing their libraries and media centers and reallocating that square footage somewhere else. That's for us an academic space, so you can repurpose it for more classrooms or other types of spaces, the maker space, the CT space, whatever. But we won't repurpose academics for more athletics. We will repurpose academics for more academics. So we kind of do cap our athletics at a certain point because I think we're focusing on the academics. But if you want to kind of divvy up some of that space or make this like a bigger cafeteria or whatever event space, it makes sense. We can do some of that. If music and arts are a bigger thing, again, you can push and add an extra art group or extra practice room or something for the music. Just at the end of the day, we have our cap on square footage, and if we go over that, it becomes all live, but say within that, and just some kind of subgroups, minimums that you can kind of repurpose and redistribute that square footage that as best makes sense for you and what your priorities are. There's some issues that do very little art, which seems odd, but there's stuff. So maybe only one art versus two, and then, but add another distribution group so far. So or vice versa. So it just depends on the districts you want to prioritize within that academic spaces.
Is there any way to show like a mock-up of what a new class would look like? Not like exactly, but just something I think to help people.
Like an individual classroom?
Yeah, just something to show like the excitement of like this is.
I'd say on our website.
Okay.
So within our website, we all these different program spaces, we have our kind of typical classroom, typical art room, typical this or that. And it used to be just a 2D floor plan, which is hard to read. But with our update 24, we've added more visuals. So there are 3D renderings of just kind of a typical space that if there's classrooms or science lab, art room, whatever those are, you can pull down. And again, it's just a typical room with square footage and kind of casework and what you might see, tables, desks, chairs, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's gonna ebb and flow with your final design, but that gives you kind of a typical look of what each of those different spaces are. And it's a 3D rendering.
So something you can put in your presentation next week. That would
Yeah,
It could be full some of
Yeah.
those.
I'd say it's a website you can pull up on the flyer, but I'd say if there's typical spaces you want to see, a couple different spaces, let us know. They can.
I was thinking it might be good for the community to see.
And
Yeah.
once this proceeds further, the community will have further engagement, and when you start talking about the specific design, that's when a lot of those things start to presentations, but just to get a feel for it. overall.
Yeah, just like even just a picture, just something to.
Yeah, we've expanded, they're not, see, not every building's on there, but we do have a folder on our website that has a catalog of photos for different spaces, and not only our 3D renderings, but like some actual spaces from buildings that we built, whether it's the cafeteria or the gyms, I think some classrooms or other.
I'm just thinking, to show what they have.
But yeah, so we have that plus like the actual finished product from our schools, and then we have a map that also shows some finished buildings around the state. So, but yeah, so there's a lot of examples, and they're all a little different, but they also fit within our design requirements. And so I think that is also the nice thing as well. There are requirements. No two schools look the same unless they want to look the same. It's also variety and kind of tailor what you want to your district.
So next week's meeting would basically look like we started off with, like the purpose will be, are we gonna build high school or are we gonna build middle school? And then from there, would it look a lot like what you guys read today, pros and cons, option A, option B, pros and cons of each, cost of each, size of each, and then open it up to input from the community. That's about how it would look.
Slide about the LFI, what that means, like, and then some of the images, and it'll be much what you've seen tonight. Okay,
Exciting.
thank you all, excellent questions. Thank you.
Thank you, OFCC, for opening the wallet for it.
Thank you guys for getting all this together. I know that, I know,
We do joke about bringing the guy a check sometimes. That doesn't make it different for people to give us a check.
There you go. We appreciate.
We're remembering it.
thank you, Mr. Nutter, and Mrs. Slater too. I know you guys have been doing a lot on your end.
You're
That's not spring
welcome.
break.
We worked on that over Easter break.
Thank you, Doug. I know it's a lot.
I appreciate all the attachments too, they were very helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the. That's the end, of it. Now we just adjourn, right?
Motion to adjourn.
So now can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I'll say, okay.
Take roll, please.
Mrs. Butler,
Yes.
Mrs. Ambergy.
Mr. B said it.
Oh, sorry. Mr. B,
Yes.
Mrs. Ambergy,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mrs. Leskowitz.
Yes.